Replacing the MLP switch can be fast and easy, but it can also be a bit of a pain. Having the right information can make all the difference. Hey, what's going on? It's Robert and you are watching Southpaw Auto Works. In this episode, we're going to be tackling the MLP switch on the GM 4L60E. We're going to cover some general information such as the different names one could call the switch, as well as the different generations of the switch so you know what to look for when ordering a replacement part. And of course, we're going to tackle the removal and the reinstallation of the switch on this automatic transmission. Without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Let's kick things off with the different names you might encounter. So I call this an MLP switch. MLP stands for manual lever position. So manual lever position switch. What's the manual lever? That's this guy right here. When you're in the vehicle, and whether it's a column shift or a floor shift, either way, that's moving a cable. That cable is attached to this linkage here, and that moves this lever to a number of different positions, whether that's park, reverse, neutral, and any of the various flavors of drive. The transmission's currently shifted into park. This is manual first gear, manual second, manual third. This is drive. This is the shifter position we would normally have the vehicle in for everyday driving. Each of the gears are going to be automatically upshifted and downshifted, controlled by the computer. So that's drive, neutral, reverse, and last but not least, back to park. Just for clarification, anytime our shift lever moves, this shift lever is bolted to the shaft. The shaft is splined to the inside of the MLP, and this part of the MLP actually rotates with the shaft. So like I said, I call it an MLP switch, but you might hear it referred to as an MLPS, a neutral safety switch, neutral safety backup switch, transmission range sensor, Prindle, and maybe some other names that I'm forgetting. With the names out of the way, let's talk about what the MLP switch actually does. It's got a number of jobs. First job is it prevents the engine from starting anytime the transmission is shifted into one of the drive gears, whether that's forward or reverse. Said another way, the MLP switch makes it so the engine can only be started anytime the transmission is shifted into park or neutral. Second job of the MLP is to illuminate the backup lights anytime the shifter is moved into the reverse position. Third job of the MLP is to share information with the PCM or basically the computer of the 4L60E. So if we're in the driver's seat and we shift the transmission, that's going to get, that motion is sent down to the MLP. The MLP takes that data, sends it to the PCM or the computer. The computer uses that information to shift the transmission. It's going to affect upshift timing, line pressure, which is just an oil pressure that applies the clutches, and so on. Anywho, with that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the generations of the MLP switch. The 4L60E was first used in 1993. 93 and 94 models are not equipped with an MLP switch. The first generation of the MLP was used in 1995, and it's 95 through 2003. The switch has two connectors on it, one with 7 pins and the other one outfitted with 4 pins. And then in 2004, they introduced the second generation, which this MLP is only equipped with one connector. That one connector does house 11 pins. In 2008, GM did away with the MLP switch. They then utilized an IMS, stands for internal mode switch. As the name implies, it's located on the inside of the transmission. At any rate, different part, different topic for a different time. All right, got the transmission repositioned here on the bench. I know, must be nice, working on the bench. And we're now ready to actually remove the MLP. Speaking of being on the bench, it's definitely a lot easier to do this on the bench. It's still easy to do in the vehicle, but there are some things that may get in the way while doing this, and I'll touch on that as we go. Let's pretend this transmission is still bolted in the vehicle. Before I ever go into the vehicle and do anything with the MLP, first I'm in the driver's seat and I need to shift the transmission into neutral. This one's currently in park. There's reverse and neutral. Then I'm under the vehicle and I need to remove the shift linkage / shift cable. Get a pry bar, flathead screwdriver, pop that off, swing the cable out of the way. Then it's on to the electrical connector. This is a second gen MLP, only has one connector, and removing this connector is pretty straightforward, pretty easy. However, on the other hand, the first gen MLP, the one that's got two independent electrical connectors on it, they are notorious for being a pain to remove. Problem is, from the factory, GM used glue to install those harnesses into the MLP connectors. I imagine GM had a number of reasons for doing this. To the best of my knowledge, the main reason was for the sake of weatherproofing. You don't want to get water into these electrical contacts because water is going to result in corrosion, and corrosion is never a good thing. At any rate, the workaround for that is really simple. Heat is your friend. Take a heat gun to one of the connectors, get it heated up, and that'll warm up the glue, and then that connector will be able to be removed with ease. Rinse and repeat on the remaining connector. With the electrical out of the way, I'm on to this 15mm nut that's on the shaft there. Here on the bench, I could easily hit this with the impact gun and buzz that off and be done with it. However, in the vehicle, especially this vehicle being four-wheel drive, you've got a transfer case and a drive shaft, not to mention some exhaust running by here. Point is, you may not have enough room to get an impact gun up in here. So then we're left to using a wrench. With the wrench, I can throw a wrench on here and try to break that loose, but as you can see, we're shifting gears, and I can pull up on this and I can break this free, but I do run the risk of tweaking the other end of the shaft here. It's connected to what's called a rooster comb, but point is, I don't want to damage that rooster comb. And avoiding damage is really easy. So there's park, reverse, throw it back into neutral. I like to just put an adjustable wrench on here to hold that linkage from moving. Grab my wrench. Get the nut off of there. Take this linkage back and forth like so. Comes right off. Next are these 13mm bolts. Those bolts actually hold the MLP to the transmission case, and I'm going to cheat for these. We're now at a point that the MLP can be slid off. But before I do that, I'm gonna take a wire brush and I'm gonna knock any crusties off of here. Maybe mud, grime from oil, who knows. But I'm gonna clean all that off, which is gonna make it easier to get the MLP moving on here. But typically I'll get to about this point. So it'll move nice and smoothly here. Then you'll get to a point where it wants to just stop, and it will stop. Reason being is the end of this shaft is mushroomed. It's larger than the rest of the shaft. And that's because with this shift linkage arm, this lever on there, and it, not bolted, but nutted, bolted down, it's actually pushing this metal against these flats on the shaft, and that causes the shaft to deform. If this MLP is going in the trash, and chances are we're replacing it, so it is gonna go in the trash, I'll just force this thing right off of there. But I don't wanna take my brand new one and force it over that mushrooming, because it's just gonna damage the brand new one. But reason I pull this thing off right now is it's gonna give me more room to fix the mushrooming, which I just need to get a file in here. And I'm gonna file on all these surfaces, all the way around the shaft, here, on the opposing side, and then along these flats on both sides to remove any mushrooming. Here's a close-up of what it is that I'm filing. It's going to be this surface right here and the same surface on the opposite side. And then if need be, I'm filing across here and of course the opposite side there. Once I'm satisfied with the filing of the shaft, I'm going to take my old MLP and I'm going to conduct a little test fit. Got a little resistance there, but it's not bad. I think it's acceptable. But we also got to remember, I pulled this MLP off right over a mushroom shaft, so the fit on there is going to be a little loose. Speaking of the fit, the shaft itself, there are flats on opposing sides of the shaft. So the shaft should be round, but it's like a circle with flats on opposing sides. The inside of the MLP is no exception to that. It's round, but it also has corresponding flats on opposing sides, and they, of course, correspond with those flats, and that's what enables the inside of the MLP to rotate anytime this shaft is rotated or the shifter is moved. Ultimately, I need to test fit everything with the new MLP, not just the old one. Once I'm happy with how everything fits, then it's on to adjusting the new MLP, installing that MLP onto the trans, and then verifying proper adjustment. All that right after a quick break. Adjusting the MLP is pretty straightforward. How straightforward? Well, we're currently looking at a second gen MLP, but on the first gen MLP, the new MLP will come out of the box and it'll have a temporary alignment bracket right on the MLP itself. It's already aligned. Super easy. Second gen, no alignment bracket out of the box. However, both checking the adjustment and setting the adjustment are both very simple. You've got two alignment dots on the part of the MLP that does not rotate. You've got an alignment dot here and another alignment dot here on the opposing side of the circle. And then on the part of the MLP that actually rotates, you've got slots. One slot here and one slot here. So to get it lined up is really easy. Use a straight edge. I've got this little metal one here. It doesn't fit inside of the slots perfectly. As you can see, there's a lot of slop, and it's possible for me to get this thing like diagonal between the slots. So I'm just gonna push it against the right side of the slots to keep it straight, if you will. And right now we can see that we are not centered over those dots, the other dots. So I need to get this thing rotated a little bit. I use snap ring pliers. Just gonna grab the inside of the bore, rotate it some. That looks good to my eye. And then I'll of course verify with the straight edge. Now we're not going to be centered right over either of the dots because the straight edge is not wide enough to do that. This is pretty close. I'm going to go just a skosh more, and I probably don't even need to do this. I think getting it where it is right now would probably be good enough. I'll go just a hair more. Hopefully my head's not blocking the shot, but this to me is good enough. And this MLP is now ready to be installed. Installing the MLP back onto the trans is pretty straightforward. I'm going to start by getting the shifter into neutral. Go back to park. That was in reverse. And there's neutral. Then it's a matter of taking our adjusted MLP, getting that installed, then installing the two 13mm bolts. Get the socket on there, make it a little faster, huh? Maybe. Those are on there finger tight. I'm gonna go ahead and snug them up just a little bit, just to keep the MLP from moving while I install the electrical harness. Get the harness installed, and then it's at this point, it's helpful to have a buddy, somebody behind the wheel, and have them try to start the vehicle. If it starts, we're good with neutral, but we're not done. We then need to shift the trans over to park, have our buddy try to start it again, and if we're good there, then we can move to the next step. Just shifting to reverse, have the buddy turn the ignition on, and then I'll go to the back of the vehicle and verify that the backup lights are indeed illuminated. Now, in the event that we've got the trans shifted into neutral and our buddy tries to start the engine, but the engine won't crank, we need to make an adjustment. In that instance, I'm gonna loosen this bolt here, and then hopefully I can sneak a wrench behind the electrical harness and loosen our other bolt here. And now with that moved, with those bolts loosened, we're able to rotate our MLP to another position, snug the bolts up, and it's just rinse and repeat. Try neutral, park, make sure those start, and then make sure the backup lights work. And once everything's done, everything's been properly adjusted, then it's a matter of getting the 13mm bolts torqued down, our lever installed, nut back on, 13mm bolts, and the 15mm nut, to the best of my memory, are 18 foot-pounds. We're connecting our shift linkage back on. And by the way, your buddy may need to shift the trans back into neutral up top if the shifter's been moved. And it's done. That's going to wrap it up for this video. However, we're far from done with the 4L60E. We've got a lot more in store for you. If you haven't done so already, Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell too so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Once again, my name's Robert and I will catch you next time.